A columnist and political scientist and an expert in Philippines-China ties. Richard, from what the Foreign Secretary is saying, do you get the impression that the Philippines has a new way to tackle an old challenge from China in the South China Sea?
Well, it's hard to say that there's a new way here or we're dealing with the old challenge, because on the one hand, the challenge from China is an evolving challenge. And as far as the Philippines is concerned, we're not only facing threats in the South China Sea area where we have territorial disputes with China, but now the invasion of Taiwan is an increasing probability, right? And there are even discussions of that happening within the coming years, if not coming decades. So now the Philippines is also worried about the potential ramifications of a Chinese invasion or any kind of serious military operations against Taiwan, which, by the way, is separated from the Philippines by a very narrow strait. So the threat from China is it's evolving. And at the same time, the Philippine strategy is also adjusting accordingly. So the Marcos Jr. administration policy is unlike any of the previous administration, precisely because it's friendlier to China than previous liberal reformist administration, but definitely tougher also in China than the previous Duterte administration.
It's interesting you mentioned Taiwan, because I did want your views on Taiwan, and we did ask the Foreign Secretary about that. That's coming up in a bit. But just staying on the South China Sea, China has refused to consider what the Philippines is saying, essentially. It also does not accept the 2016 ruling from the Hague's International Arbitration Court that essentially ruled China does not have a claim over the South China Sea. What options does the Philippines really have?
Well, actually, I would have argued it more forcefully than the Philippine Foreign Secretary. I think the Philippine Arbitration Award actually has been extremely useful. First of all, have you noticed China is not using the term nine-dash line anymore because it knows that it's a legal joke, that it's a diplomatic liability. So since the award came out, China is coming up with alternative ideas and alternative doctrines that have also been struck down and ridiculed and mocked by global experts. So actually, it's working because China itself is rethinking its diplomatic positioning in the language it uses when it comes to its claims. Number two, the Philippine Arbitration Award actually provided the legal pretext for the United States to expand its military presence in the area, particularly in terms of what you call freedom of navigation operations. So over the past few years, we have seen dozens of American warships getting close to the Chinese artificially created islands and challenging China's claims. And now we see even European countries coming in, not as aggressive as the United States, but legally aggressive, diplomatic aggressive. And sometimes we see the French, the Europeans also passing through with their warships to also send a signal. So to be honest, I think the Philippines is not recognizing how effective its policy has been. But that's my argument. It has been effective, but we have to leverage it further. And President Marcos has been very clear. It's non-negotiable. The Philippines has no territorial disputes with China because China's claims in the Philippine waters are inconsistent with international law.
I'm glad we're talking to you and getting some context out of the Foreign Secretary's remarks. But as you mentioned, the threat from Taiwan and what the tensions over that island could also impact the Philippines. And my colleague Janelle did ask Foreign Secretary Manalo about that.